The courtroom was still ringing with Robert's recorded words when Judge Harrison leaned forward. "Mr. Wellington," the judge said firmly, "stand and be sworn." Robert's lawyer hesitated, but the judge's sharp look left no room for argument. Robert stood, raised his hand, and took the oath. "Do you deny that was your voice on the recording?" the judge asked. Robert's mouth opened, then closed. "No," he said finally. David watched silently, heart pounding. The little black girl in the back row leaned closer to the rail, whispering something to her grandmother. Judge Harrison's voice was cool. "Do you deny that your primary reason for seeking custody was to access the trust fund?" Robert hesitated again. His lawyer tried to object, but the judge overruled. "Yes," Robert said at last, his voice tight. "I thought it was the best way to stabilize my finances, and so it was about money," David said quietly. Robert's shoulders slumped. The courtroom murmured. From the back, the little girl gave David a small, encouraging smile. For the first time, he smiled back. The balance in the room had shifted. The judge adjusted his glasses as David stepped forward, his small notebook clutched tightly in his hands. From his backpack, he pulled a manila folder and placed it neatly on the table. "Your Honor," he said, his voice steady, "I've spent the last 3 months gathering evidence. Everything here is public record. Lawsuits, property transfers, business dealings, all tied to Robert Wellington." Robert stiffened in his chair. Dr. Mitchell scoffed. "He's just a child. This can't possibly." David didn't let him finish. "Every page is legal. Every fact is real. If I can find it in a library, so could anyone else." He opened the folder and began laying documents across the table. The courtroom leaned forward as foreclosure notices, lawsuits, and newspaper clippings slid into view. 17 families, David said firmly. In 5 years, Wellington Industries profited from people who were vulnerable, people who couldn't fight back. Judge Harrison picked up a page, his brows knitting as he read. Robert shifted uneasily, his mask of control beginning to crack. "This isn't love," David said, looking straight at his father. "It's business, and I won't let it happen again." Robert straightened in his chair, forcing a calm smile. "David, son, don't call me son." The words were quiet, but they hit like a hammer. "You've been in my life 4 times in 9 years, David said, his voice steady. 2 birthdays, 1 Christmas, and once for a 15-minute visit where you told my mum our apartment was too small for someone with my potential. 2 weeks later, you filed for custody." Janet's breath caught. Robert's lawyers froze. David turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I did my research. My father recently lost a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. His 3rd wife filed for divorce, and then I discovered this." He held up a printed document. "My grandmother's trust fund, worth $1.7 million. It can only be accessed if my father gains full custody." A shocked murmur swept through the courtroom. Robert's confident mask cracked. "This is not about love," David said, closing the file with a snap. "This is about money, and I refuse to be bought." Judge Harrison leaned forward, studying the boy. The courtroom had never felt so still. Judge Harrison set the papers down, his expression grave. "These are serious allegations. They're facts," David said calmly, closing his notebook. "And they show exactly why we are here today." Dr. Mitchell tried to regain control. "Even if true, Your Honor, my client can still provide a superior education." "About that," David interrupted, pulling out another sheet from his folder. "I know what my father plans to do with me if he wins custody." Robert's head snapped up. David didn't look at him. 6 months ago, during his visit, I overheard him on the phone. He said he would send me to Riverside Military Academy the moment he got custody. Not because it was good for me, but because it would keep me out of the way. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. "That is hearsay," Dr. Mitchell said quickly. "No," David replied, unzipping his backpack. "It's evidence." He placed a small recorder on the table. "I recorded that call because Ms. Rodriguez, the librarian, told me documentation matters." Robert's face went pale. For the first time, he looked truly afraid. Judge Harrison turned his attention to Janet. "Mrs. Thompson, do you wish to say anything before I hear from your son directly?" Janet's hands trembled as she stood. "Your Honor, I have done my best to raise David on my own. It hasn't always been easy, but we've built a life together. I just want him to feel safe, loved, and heard." Her voice cracked, and she sat back down. "Thank you," the judge said gently before looking at David. "You may speak freely." David took a deep breath, stepping closer to the witness stand. I don't care about money. I don't care about big houses or fancy schools. I care about living with someone who actually knows me, who asks about my day, who comes to my school plays, who remembers my favorite book. Robert's gaze dropped to the floor. I am not property, David finished. I am a person, and I want to stay with my mum. In the back row, the little black girl clapped her hands once before her grandmother hushed her, smiling. The judge nodded slowly. Thank you, David. Your words will be considered carefully. I am my mother's lawyer. The words cracked through the courtroom like thunder. Judge Harrison froze mid-page, peering over his glasses. 9-year-old David Thompson stood tall beside his mother, Janet, his thin frame trembling but his voice unshaken. Across the room, Robert Wellington III nearly choked on his coffee. I'm sorry, young man, the judge said slowly, but this is a legal hearing between adults. I know, Your Honor, David replied, adjusting his glasses. But under Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, I have the right to express my opinion in matters that directly affect me, and this case affects me. A stunned silence followed. Robert glared at his lawyers as if they had betrayed him. For 8 years, Robert had barely been a presence. 4 visits, all marked by expensive gifts and hollow promises. Now, suddenly, he wanted full custody. Dr. Mitchell, Robert's attorney, rose quickly. This is highly irregular. David didn't flinch. And if you truly cared about my well-being, he said, you would want to hear what I have to say, not silence me. The courtroom leaned forward. Something extraordinary was happening. Before anyone could interrupt, David reached into his worn backpack and placed a small notebook on the table. Its pages were stuffed with papers and careful handwriting. Your Honor, David said, his voice steady. I have prepared my case. I have documents, timelines, and evidence to prove why I must stay with my mother and why the petitioner's motives are not what they seem. A ripple of surprise passed through the courtroom. Robert shifted uncomfortably. His lawyer, Dr. Mitchell, cleared his throat. Your Honor, this is absurd. A child cannot... David looked straight at him. This child can, and will, because no one else will speak for me. Janet swallowed hard. For weeks, she had seen David spending hours at the library, poring over thick books and scribbling notes, but she had never guessed what he was planning. The judge leaned back, intrigued. And what exactly do you believe these notes will show, young man? David opened the notebook and slid the first page forward. That this custody request has nothing to do with love, and everything to do with money. Robert's face turned pale. The room fell utterly silent. David reached into his backpack one last time and pulled out a small black recorder. The room seemed to hold its breath. From the back row, a little black girl, no older than David, leaned forward, her wide eyes fixed on him. She had been sitting quietly with her grandmother all morning. David caught her gaze and drew strength from it. This is from my father's last visit, David said quietly. He thought I was asleep, but I heard everything. Robert sat forward sharply. David, stop. David didn't stop. He said, and I quote, once I have custody, we'll move him to Riverside Academy. Keeps him out of the way while I get things sorted. A ripple of gasps swept through the courtroom. That is hearsay, Dr. Mitchell objected. No, David replied, pressing play. Robert's voice echoed through the room. Once I have custody, I'll send him off to Riverside. Less trouble for everyone. The little girl whispered to her grandmother. He's so brave. David's back straightened. He wasn't just speaking for himself anymore. He was speaking for every kid who had ever been ignored. The courtroom held its breath as Judge Harrison removed his glasses and folded his hands. This court has heard compelling testimony and reviewed substantial evidence, he began. Mr. Wellington, your motives have been shown to be primarily financial. This does not serve the child's best interests. Robert's head dropped. Custody will remain with Mrs. Thompson, the judge continued, his tone firm. Mr. Wellington, you may petition for supervised visitation after 6 months, provided you demonstrate consistent effort and good faith. A soft cry escaped Janet's lips, relief flooding her face. David squeezed her hand tightly. From the back, the little black girl grinned, whispering to her grandmother, he won. Robert's lawyer began to speak, but Robert silenced him with a raised hand. For the first time, he looked small, not powerful, not in control. Just tired. David faced him quietly. I don't hate you, he said. I just needed you to listen. Robert didn't answer, but something in his expression shifted, a crack in the wall he had built for years. Judge Harrison's gavel struck. This hearing is concluded.